You think being a good parent means your children have a roof over their heads and food on the table. You think that if you give them a better life than you had, you've done your job. That philosophy led to the single biggest regret of my 100 years. It wasn't one grand mistake. It was 1,000 small ones that slowly built a wall between my children and me. A wall I would spend the rest of my life trying and failing to tear down. You have to understand, I was born during the Great Depression. I watched my parents work until their hands were raw. For them, love wasn't about long talks or expressed feelings. It was about survival. It was about making sure your children had shoes on their feet. Strength meant silence. You didn't complain. You didn't burden others with your troubles. You just worked harder. I carried that lesson with me. I swore my children would never know the kind of worry I did. I saw it as my sacred duty to be a shield. I would work the long hours, take the extra shifts, and do whatever it took so they could have a life free from fear. I told myself it was all for them. I wasn't like my own father, who I knew regretted working so much. I told myself I was different. It was a convenient lie. So I built a fortress around their childhood, and my silence formed the walls. They never heard my wife and me whispering about a bill we couldn't pay. They never saw the despair on my face when I lost a promotion I'd been counting on. I'd come home, force a smile, and ask about their day. When a business I'd poured everything into went under, I told them it was just a small side project, nothing to worry about. I thought I was protecting their innocence. My philosophy was simple. A child's world is for childhood things. The adult world with its failures and fears could wait. I taught them to be good people, to be honest, and to work hard. But I never showed them the man I actually was. They only knew the father. They never knew my struggles. I remember when my son was a teenager, struggling with a class. He came to me, full of worry. I gave him a practical, 5-step plan for how to succeed. What I didn't give him was a story. I never once said, I know how that feels. I failed a class once. I just gave him a map, never mentioning I'd been lost in that same forest myself. I thought I was being strong for him. In reality, I was being distant. And I was teaching them a terrible lesson. When you have a problem, you handle it alone. You don't show weakness. As they grew into adults, that distance began to feel like a chasm. Our conversations were pleasant but shallow. They'd tell me about their successes, new jobs, new houses, and I was immensely proud. This was the life I had worked to give them. But then I started to notice things. My wife would tell me our daughter was having trouble at work, something she never mentioned to me. I found out from a relative that my son and his wife were struggling to have a child, a painful journey they went through completely on their own. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were just following the rules I had unknowingly set for them. Be strong. Handle it yourself. Don't show weakness. They couldn't come to me with their pain because I had never, not once, shown them mine. I had given them everything except the one thing they truly needed, a father who was a human being. The moment it all came crashing down was on a Tuesday. I was 78 years old. My son, then in his 50s, called me. His voice was hollow in a way I'd never heard. He told me his wife of 25 years had left him. I was silent, listening as he described the empty house and the note she'd left on the table. My mind immediately started racing, trying to form a plan. Lawyers, living arrangements, financial support. That's what I did. I solved problems, but before I could say a single word, he took a shaky breath and spoke the 5 words that have haunted me for the last 22 years. I can't talk to you about this. I asked him what he meant. "It's just," he said, his voice finally breaking, "you were always so perfect. You never had problems. You wouldn't understand. You wouldn't understand me, a man who grew up with nothing, a man who had faced ruin, who had lain awake at night, sick with fear, a man who had failed, been betrayed, and doubted himself every single step of the way. I wouldn't understand. In that single moment, I saw the totality of my mistake. My shield had worked too well. I had protected them so completely from my own humanity that they didn't think I had any. I spent a lifetime showing them my strength, and in doing so, I robbed them of ever seeing my heart. In the 22 years since that phone call, we've tried to rebuild. I talk more now. I try to share the stories of my failures, to show him the man I was all along. But building a bridge at 80 is hard work. You can't just pour a foundation that should have been laid 50 years ago. Our relationship is good. He is a good son. He calls, he visits. But there's a part of him I will never reach. The most vulnerable part. He learned how to survive his darkest moments without me, and you can't unlearn that kind of independence. I see him with his friends, the raw, open honesty they share, and I know he can't have that with me, and that is my fault. That is the long echo of my regret. It's the polite distance that sits between us where intimacy should be. It's knowing that in the worst moment of his life, my son looked at his father and felt completely and utterly alone. I thought being a good parent meant being a perfect, impenetrable shield. I learned far too late that a good parent is just a person, one who shares their failures as openly as their successes, a person who shows their children that it's okay to be scared, to be lost, and to ask for help. Your vulnerability is not a weakness to hide from your children. It is a gift. It is the only way they learn how to find you when they are lost themselves. It is the key that unlocks their heart. Don't build a fortress around them. You will only lock yourself out. Build a bridge instead. Please don't make the same mistake I did.